Coming up today, a senior North Korean diplomat indicates the regime is preparing to launch a long-range rocket in October and says Pyongyang has no intention of negotiating over its nuclear weapons program. The head of South Korea's ruling party presses high-profile US politicians on the need for Japan to make a sincere apology for its wartime sexual enslavement of women this year, the 70th anniversary of the end of World War II. Plus, it turns out the MERS outbreak did not have a major impact on consumer spending in Korea, with credit and debit card spending actually rising during the height of the outbreak. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Wednesday, the 29th of July. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thank you ever so much for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. We start this afternoon with the clearest indication yet that North Korea plans to launch a major provocation in the coming months. A North Korean diplomat says Pyongyang will mark a special anniversary in October as it sees fit, and that includes a possible long-range missile launch. The regime has also bolted the door to dialogue on its nuclear weapons program. Son Jung-in reports.
Speaking to reporters at a rare press conference in New York on Tuesday, North Korea's ambassador to the UN, Chang Il-hoon, clearly stated that his country will hold a large-scale celebration in October to mark the 70th anniversary of the founding of the Workers' Party.
We are free to do whatever we want, right? We are not bound by any treaty or any obligations of any sort.
The envoy refused to rule out the possibility of the North test-firing a long-range missile. Referring to the country as a nuclear weapons state, the ambassador added the North will never give up its nuclear weapons since they're an essential means to defend its sovereignty. He also reiterated that North Korea is not interested in holding any discussions on the unilateral freeze or abandonment of its nuclear weapons, which he said were necessary to protect the country against the U.S.
And the mission of our nuclear forces will never change as long as the hostile policy of the United States remains intact.
The statement comes a week after South Korea reported that North Korea had completed an upgrade of its rocket launch pad. Experts say it will be able to fire a long-range missile twice the size of the 30-meter-long Unha-3 rocket launched in 2012. The U.S.-based North Korea monitoring website 38 North supports that assessment, citing recent satellite imagery of the Seohae satellite launching station near where the Unha-3 was launched. It added that there are still no signs of preparations to launch a long-range rocket or missile from the facility. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
The leader of South Korea's ruling party is urging US officials to exert their influence to ensure Japan does not further distort history in an upcoming statement marking the 70th anniversary of the end of World War II. Speaking with Daniel Russell, the Assistant Secretary of State for East Asian and Pacific Affairs in Washington on Tuesday, Kim Moosung said that any further attempt to whitewash history is totally unacceptable. He also stressed that Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe should include a sincere apology in the statement that will come out on August 15th. Kim reiterated Korea's position during talks with House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi and the chair of the U.S. House Committee on Foreign Affairs, Ed Royce, on the same day. However, Kim's scheduled meeting with Secretary of State John Kerry was cancelled as Kerry was tied up with the Iran nuclear deal. A group of young actors are set to bring the so-called comfort women issue to New York City in the form of a musical later this week. They hope the show will contribute in getting the message out about Japan's wartime atrocities. Hwang Sang-yi reports.
With all its glitz and glamour, Broadway has long been the place for creative dreamers hoping for a shot at stardom. Just a 20-minute drive north in Harlem, another group of young dreamers is hard at work, rehearsing for the musical Comfort Women. Through music and movement, they tell the tragic story of the hundreds of women who were victims of Japan's wartime program of sexual enslavement. The director is a Korean college student named Demo Kim, who created the musical to raise awareness about this lesser-known chapter in Korean history. But first, he had to ensure his 53 cast members knew the history too.
I didn't know about it before. I did research on it, and I was very, very devastated not knowing that this had happened.
Regardless of their nationality, the actors say getting the message out about the comfort women is their top priority.
As a Japanese and as a Japanese American, I think it's even more important to be involved so that people can see that, yeah, there's sentiment across the board for people to recognize this event in history.
A recent meeting with a former sex slave in Washington, D.C. strengthened their sense of purpose.
I could just feel her energy, her strength, her perseverance, her heartache as well. And I'm definitely going to take all of that with me into this show and hope to do everything that she's fought for up till now.
The director made clear that his intention is not to point fingers at Japan, but to build momentum for reconciliation between the two countries.
What I'm trying to say to the audience is, like, these are what happened, and these are what our new generation have to confront. And then, if we compromise by ourselves, then we can move forward to the future.
The musical Comfort Women will open at New York's biggest off-Broadway theater, St. Clement's, for a 2-week run on July 31st. The team's next goal is to bring the show here to Broadway. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News, New York.
Now to the latest on the surveillance scandal that refuses to die down. The head of Korea's under-fire spy agency told Parliament this week that his agency never snooped on citizens, but his public insistence has done little to quell tensions between the nation's rival political parties. The main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy says it wants the National Intelligence Service to reveal all log files that contain the usage records of the hacking software, which is at the heart of this scandal. It's urging the agency to examine what it has done wrong and to use the opportunity to revamp itself and have a fresh start. The ruling Saenuri party continues to insist that the disclosure of the records would severely damage the nation's surveillance and intelligence activities. The National Intelligence Service has been mired in numerous scandals in recent years, including allegations that it meddled in the 2012 presidential election. Korea's second quarter economic growth was lower than expected due to the effects of the MERS outbreak and a nationwide drought. But a report shows the actual impact of the outbreak on consumer spending was limited. Shin Se-min reports.
A report by the Credit Finance Association on Wednesday shows that card spending in June increased by over 8.5% from the year before for a total of roughly $44 billion. Credit card spending rose by over 10% in the second quarter from the same period last year, while debit card spending rose 18%. The figure indicates that the MERS outbreak had a limited impact on consumer spending. However, the effect differed depending on the sector. While consumers were reluctant to spend money at large supermarkets and department stores, with sales in June decreasing over 10% compared to the same month last year, sales at convenience stores and smaller supermarkets increased during the same period. Amusement parks and leisure businesses saw their sales drop by nearly $16 million in June, indicating that many Koreans were unwilling to spend on recreational activities during the MERS outbreak. Experts also say the trend shows that consumers are spending in smaller amounts. Now, with the government announcing a de facto end to the MERS outbreak, analysts are hopeful that consumer spending will pick up in the months to come. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Now, bank lending to households in Korea is still on the rise. This is while interest rates remain persistently low amid a housing boom. At the same time, the average delinquency rate for loans extended by Korean banks has dropped to its lowest level since the global financial crisis. According to the Financial Supervisory Service, household debt climbed by $7.1 billion in June from the previous month. The margin of increase in June represents a slight decrease, actually, from April. In June, the outstanding amount of won-denominated bank loans came in at $1.1 trillion. That's down 0.7% from the previous month. The average delinquency rate was 0.61% at the end of last month, down 0.19 percentage point from the month before, and that is the largest drop since December. It appears the glass ceiling is still preventing women in Korea from rising to the top positions in Korea's corporate world, according to a survey by CEO Score, a company research website. More than 70% of some 280 companies affiliated with Korea's top 30 business groups had 0 female executives. Hyundai Heavy Industries, S-Oil and LS are among the companies that don't have a single female executive on their board of directors. Hanjin and CJ were among the handful that had female executives in more than half of their affiliates. The survey shows that only 1 out of every 1,300 women working for the 30 major groups are in an executive level position. The figure for men is 1 out of every 74. Local companies' second quarter profits haven't shown great results thus far, but if you look at the next quarter, it's even less exciting after the majority of Korea's biggest firms recently saw their outlooks slashed from the previous month. Kwon-Swa has the details.
The third quarter of the year is looking grim in terms of profits for 2/3 of Korea's largest firms. Market researcher FN Guide has slashed its third quarter profit expectations for 71 out of 109 companies. It cut its third quarter profit forecast for Samsung Electronics, Korea's biggest firm, by 4% since its last projection made at the end of last month. Its rival, LG Electronics, was down by more than 7%. Top construction firms and the country's biggest steelmaker were not spared downgraded projections either. It's a similar story for cosmetic giant Amore Pacific, which was particularly affected by the MERS outbreak. Samsung C&T and Tail Industries, 2 Samsung Group affiliates set to merge, were cut too. And for the nation's shipbuilders and Korea's leading railway manufacturer, the outlook is even more bleak. The dropping profit expectations are largely due to low global demand, as Korea's biggest companies are largely export-reliant. And this is why some believe profitability won't pick up anytime soon.
If the global economy picks up and Korea's price competitiveness improves, exports will pick up. That said, we have to enhance our product quality, and that's more of a mid to long-term issue.
But some analysts are less pessimistic, like Kim Hyung-yeol of Kyobo Securities, who says the Q3 forecast is based on major Korean firms, meaning a decline in their profits could represent a better balance of market dominance between big and small companies. Kwon-Swa, Arirang News.
Now, while negotiations on the Trans-Pacific Partnership are said to be nearing completion, the United States, an impasse on dairy trade is holding up the deal. According to reports by trade ministers participating in the talks, New Zealand and Australia are pressing for more dairy exports to the United States, Canada and Japan. But Canada is resisting demands to open up its dairy industry, which is protected from foreign competition through tariffs that can run as high as 246%. The nation says this has led to 215,000 jobs at home and an economic impact of $14 billion. Without a nod from Canada, the US is also unlikely to open up its dairy market. The 12 member states aim to finish the trade negotiations this week. The giant trade agreement, which covers 12 countries and 40% of the global economy, is fast approaching its deadline of July 31st. The International Monetary Fund is urging countries with massive current account surpluses, such as China, Germany and Korea, to boost domestic demand to help correct imbalances that are limiting global growth. The IMF says there hasn't been much progress over the past several years in reducing such imbalances, which also contribute to financial instability. The Washington-based lender also says it's critical for China to adopt a flexible market-based exchange rate and to open up its mostly ring-fenced financial system. The IMF also urged governments at the national level to institute structural reforms to boost productivity and employment. Now, if you own an Android smartphone or tablet, you could be in danger of being hit with a malicious hacking attack. Experts say hackers can steal your personal information by simply sending you a text message. US-based IT firm Zimperium says it discovered a bug in Android's operating system that makes 95% of all Android devices vulnerable to a hacker taking control of the device and its contents without you, the user, ever knowing what's happening. And how it works is that a hacker sends a short video with malware hidden inside to the user they want to hack, and in a worrying new twist as well, the smartphone user doesn't even have to open it for the bug to infiltrate your phone. The flaw is in a piece of software code installed on almost all Android devices named Stage Fright. Once the device has been exploited, a hacker can gain access to the phone's data, as well as other apps, including the camera and microphone. Well, those are the stories we have for you on this Wednesday afternoon here in Seoul. For more of the latest, don't forget to check out our website, arirang.com/news. Have a great day. Goodbye.